Crying in H Mart is a memoir written by Michelle Zauner, the frontwoman of the band Japanese Breakfast, also my top Spotify artist of 2022. It's a book about grief, of identity, of relationship, longing, and death, and explores her relationship with her mother before and after her death and the processing of grief. I read the book at a time where I was quite insecure and unsure about my identity, and trying to understand where Korea fit into all of it. What did it actually mean to be Korean? Was I really Korean enough? Was I enough of anything? Can I call myself Korean if I don't speak the language, or even listen to K-pop or watch K-dramas? Was I only really Korean in the context of my surroundings as I grew up in highly westernized societies? Crying in H Mart was like reading all of my thoughts about Korea written on a page. It was comforting to see and hear the same thoughts and struggles, to know that others share the same experiences as I have. Today I'm going to try foods which are featured in the book, and to talk about my own personal experiences related to them. We start with jjajangmyeon, described in its opening chapter. The excerpt is as follows. The food court is the perfect place to people watch while sucking down salty, fatty black bean noodles. I think about my family who lived in Korea, before most of them died, and how Korean Chinese food was always the first thing we'd eat when my mom and I arrived in Seoul after a 14-hour flight from America. 20 minutes after, my aunt would phone in our order, the apartment ringer would buzz for release in MIDI, and up would come a helmeted man, fresh off his motorcycle, with a giant steel box. He'd slide open the metal door and deliver heaping bowls of noodles and deep-fried battered pork with its rich sauce on the side. The saran wrap on top would be concave and sweating. We'd peel it off and dribble black, chunky goodness all over the noodles, and pour the sticky, shiny, translucent orange sauce all over the pork. We'd sit cross-legged on the cool marble floor, slurping and reaching over one another. My aunts and mom and grandmother would jabber on in Korean, and I would eat and listen, unable to comprehend, bothering my mom every so often to translate. Jjajangmyeon has always been one of my favourite dishes, either in its original form and, in its instant, either as chapaghetti or chapaguri, which was always more readily available wherever I grew up. It's my brother's favourite dish, and every time I eat it in Seoul as I've been here, I send him a picture or a video and make him really jealous that I'm eating it. The feeling of eating the thick noodles encased in sauce, which I often finish up with rice or even more noodles after, invokes such a rich sensation, and it's one I found intensely satisfying. I remember eating 탕수육 when visiting my grandparents in New Zealand, always at the same restaurant after a church visit on Sundays, and we always sat in a satisfied and starved silence as we ate. When I was younger, we'd get the sauce on the side, which was really a testament to my younger picky eating habits. At the restaurant here in Seoul, I was able to get a single portion of each of these foods, and I just practically inhaled the food. It was so delicious. The next dish we're going to try is kongguksu, which is featured in an excerpt on page 96 to 97. It goes, When I got home from the gym, Kai and my mother were eating together at the kitchen table. Kai had cooked the soybeans she'd cooked the night before and blended them with sesame seeds and water to make a cold soy milk broth. She'd boiled soma noodles, rinsed them under a cold tap, and served them in a bowl with julienne cucumber, the milky white broth poured over on top. What is it? I asked. This one is called kongguksu, Kai said. You want to try? I nodded and sat in my usual seat at the table, across from my mother. I always considered myself well versed in Korean food, but I was beginning to question the breadth of my knowledge. I'd never heard of kongguksu. My mother had never made it, and I'd never seen it at a restaurant. Kai returned with a bowl for me and sat back down next to my mother. I took a bite. It was simple and clean with a nutty aftertaste. The noodles were chewy, and the broth was light with small, coarse bits of blended soybean. The perfect dish for summer, and the perfect dish for my mother, who was easily nauseated by scents and tastes she relished before her treatment. Similar to Zoner, kongguksu was a new dish for me to try. Even if I can pretend to be knowledgeable about Korean food with my friends, where I introduced staples like kimchi bokkeumbap or kimbap or tteokbokki. Coming here, I felt somewhat lost amongst all the different names of dishes, many of which I was trying for the first time. I was able to find kongguksu at Gwangjang Market, served by an ajumma in one of the stalls. It had such a round and nutty flavour, as she said in the book, that really wasn't too overpowering and perfect for the summer day after I'd played frisbee in the afternoon. The noodles were soft and bouncy, and the coolness of the dish was extremely refreshing. I was really full towards the end of eating it, but the ajumma really encouraged me to drink the soup, which was kind of thick and had a very full but plainly delicious flavour. It's a dish I think I know I'll come back to, and something that I can imagine enjoying together with my family. The final part of this mukbang is about Kwanjang Market, which is featured on page 204 to 205 of the book. The excerpt is as follows. We visited Kwanjang Market in one of Seoul's oldest neighbourhoods, squeezing past crowds of people threading through its covered alleys, a natural maze spontaneously joined and splintered over a century of accreditation. We passed busy ajummas in aprons and rubber kitchen gloves, tossing knife-cut noodles in colossal bubbling pots for kalguksu, grabbing fistfuls of colourful enamel from over-brimming bowls for bibimbap, standing over gurgling pools of hot oil, armed with metal spatulas in either hand, flipping the crispy sides of stone-milled soybean cakes. Metal containers filled with chokgal, salt-fermented seafood banchan, affectionately known as rice leaves because their intense, salty flavour cries out for starchy neutral balance. Raw, pregnant crabs floating belly up in soy sauce to show off the unctuous roe producing out from beneath their shells. Millions of minuscule peach-coloured krill used for making kimchi or finishing hot soup with rice. And my family's favourite, crimson sacks of palak roe, smothered in gochugaru, myeongnanjot. Kwanjang Market is just a giant playground to me where all the food I had ever dreamed of, that my grandmother and my mother would make, all made right there in front of me. I was overwhelmed by the smells, the appearance of all the food, the sounds of the calls and the slurping, the ahs, and yums, and smoke and humidity that made the market hotter than the summer heat outside. There was just so much to eat, and I left floating like an overfilled balloon, having to go on a food coma walk along the stream to start digesting everything. I had tteokbokki, which was perfectly chewy, sweet, and spicy, some kimbap and sundae, which I was trying for the first time. It reminded me of haggis, or black pudding, from Scotland, where I live. I also ate kongguksu and mandu, which was folded into my favourite sailor boy hat shape, and washed it all down with some mekju, before finishing off the evening with some hotak, a favourite of mine, which I made during lockdown, and kwabegi, which I had to line up for in a really good line, but it was definitely worth it. I knew the market was one of my grandmother's favourite places in Seoul, and that if she had her way, she would eat there for every meal when she visited Korea. I felt the loss of my family here, thinking of all the experiences I would have loved to share with them. The best thing about being in Seoul this past month has been eating all the food I grew up with in its full glory. If I could experience this much joy just being here, I knew it would be at least as much for my siblings, and infinitely more for my mother. Eating at markets is incredibly gratifying, and everything we eat is just delicious. Kwanjang Market has easily been one of my favourite places that I've been, amongst all the other markets such as Namdaemun and Noryangjin. And I'm very grateful to be able to have the opportunity to experience such culinary delights at such a wonderful place. Overall, I think Crying in H Mart is such an important book to me because it taught me a message that I'm still Korean, even if I don't speak Korean, and that the way that I connect to Korean culture via food is still a valid way to do so. She really taught me that my experience was not alone, and I think together with that and, my family experiences has meant that I've been able to understand and formulate my identity a bit more. I'm realising more and more how fluid identity and how contextual that is, and how it will change depending on the people I'm surrounding with, and that the fluidity of that fact is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm immensely grateful for having such a mixed heritage, and I think being here for this past month has given me the opportunity and the stability to understand what Koreanness is and how I can perceive Koreanness in my own individual right. I hope you all get the opportunity to experience eating some of these foods at some point, because they're all just enjoyable. Thanks for watching. This is for real criminally good. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what to do about it. My stomach